Now back to Sunrise Seattle with Elisa Jaffe and Mark Christopher on Smart Talk 570 KVI.
Oh, what's love got to do with it? What's love but a second-hand emotion?
Yeah, not everything is fuzzy and yummy and cuddly on this Valentine's Day.
Why?
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 Molly Kenny is the gal to answer that. Molly is a Seattle area family law attorney. She's been practicing for more than 30 years, been doing family law for 15 years. And Molly, why don't you push that? There's that button for your microphone. Tell us what happens around Valentine's Day. What do you notice in family law?
Well, Lisa, February is a very high filing month. It is the biggest filing month of the year.
For divorces?
For divorces.
Why?
Because people, I think, start the new year and they say, I'm not doing a year like that again. And they start looking around for divorce lawyers, and by the time they find somebody, get the information, the first 2 to 3 weeks of February, I will file more cases in these first 3 weeks than I will at any other time in the year.
Unbelievable.
Do people come in and just break down because it's also an emotional time because they think about Valentine's and then they're going through this, or are they so relieved? What do you notice?
They are so relieved that they finally decided it's time to be done and they want to move on.
So what would you suggest if people are having these feelings right now and they are considering getting a divorce? What are some of the things that they should do and prepare for before they even go see a divorce attorney?
Well, I think people need to get very clear in their own minds if they really want a divorce or if they need to try some form of marriage counseling. Because people will sometimes come to see me over the course of multiple years because they haven't gotten there emotionally and mentally yet.
Mm-hmm.
But if
So do you become the marriage counselor?
I think I'm half marriage counselor, half lawyer.
Right. Okay.
Good for you.
So if they're done and they know they're done and they've done the counseling route and nothing's working, now what? What do they think about next?
Then I think they need to start to think about the finances, and if they have children, they have to start to think about the children and what's going to be best for the kids and how they're going to work their finances, because supporting two households on the same amount of income is definitely a much more strenuous experience for most people than living on just, supporting one household.
You know what I'm noticing a lot more lately is people who really are done with their marriage, but somebody's upstairs and somebody's downstairs because they can't live together, but they can't afford to live apart.
And that is happening, I think, with greater frequency. And there are some people that can do that, Elisa, some people who are able to maintain a cooperative relationship for the sake of the children while they make their way through the division of the assets and setting up a schedule. Other people cannot do that. It's a recipe for disaster. 911 is going to get called, and somebody's going to end up going to jail.
So do you provide like a guide to help one who just says, I know it's for sure, I want a divorce, and just kind of like a map out?
Oh, here, I'll show you this, too, because I got this in the mail. You didn't get that in the mail.
No. The Thinking Man's Guide to Divorce in Washington.
Not that you should be reading that, but I'm just saying.
Okay, so this is kind of just how to do it right and make sure you cross your T's, dot your I's.
So why did you do a play-by-play book for guys who are considering divorce?
Well, one of the reasons why I did is I think there's a lot of self-help books for women out there, but there's not so many for men out there. And this is really just, it is a play-by-play. These are the issues. There's not a lot of touchy-feely stuff in it. It's just, this is what you need to focus on. These are some of the rules. This is what the law is. This is what's going to happen if you go to court, to help men figure out their way through this process.
I like the first 3 words here for guys. Relax, slow down, breathe.
Yes.
Perfect.
Yes.
Anne is in Seattle, and Anne is calling in with a question for Molly Kenny. Molly is a family law attorney who's practiced here for 31 years. Good morning, Anne.
Good morning.
Good morning. What's your question for divorce attorney Molly Kenny?
Well, I've been considering filing for divorce and chatting with my husband a bit about that, and he makes a pretty significant income, over $200,000 a year, yet he's telling me that we don't have anything to divide. We don't own a fancy home or fancy cars, and I'm just sort of perplexed by the whole statement of his that we don't have anything.
And has he been in charge of the finances?
Yes, he has.
Okay. So now, Molly, what does she do?
Well, and this is not an uncommon situation in which the primary wage earner, which generally is the husband, has been in charge of the finances, and come to time to talking about divorce, suddenly there's no money. So what I would suggest that you do is take a look at your income tax returns for the last 5 to 6, 7 years. Then take a look at your bank statements in the 401k or any of your retirement statements, IRAs, and track the money. If he's making about $200,000 a year over 5 years, you're bringing in $1 million. Look at where the money's gone. And if you can't account for $1 million going into either paying your income taxes, going into your bank accounts or your pension accounts, then perhaps that would suggest, I'm not saying it's for certain, but it would suggest that money might be being siphoned off somewhere else.
How often is hidden assets a situation in a divorce?
I would say it probably only comes up about 5 to 8% of the time. People think it comes up more often, but generally you can account for the money if you do the proper tracing.
So, and is it a thing where it's down in the Cayman Islands, or are they just hiding it in the garage?
Sometimes people are hiding in the Cayman Islands or Swiss bank accounts, but those generally tend to be the extremely wealthy people who can afford all that tax sheltering. Sometimes they're just hiding it in a secret bank account in a small bank up in Everett or Marysville, and thinking that that's never going to get discovered.
Molly,
And it does.
Is this an easy state, Washington State? Is this an easier place to file for divorce than most states? And if so, why?
Well, Washington is a no-fault state, so you can
What's
get
that?
divorced for any reason.
No-fault state means I don't need to define. I can just say I just want divorce?
Absolutely. And sometimes in states where there is still, you need a fault reason, that's when you get into all those messy cases where you have to prove adultery or you have to prove cruelty. But Washington, if you don't like somebody's hair color, you can get divorced.
Wow, okay. Or if they don't have hair. Anne, how nasty is it for you, Anne? What are you going through?
You know, it's not nasty at this point. It's just a discussion. It's just that there's a real lack of information on my end. So it makes it a bit scary. Relying on someone else's information.
And what about the amount of money that it takes to go through this?
What was your question?
And what about the amount of money that it can take to prepare for going through something like this? Isn't
right,
that
yeah.
frightening?
Yeah, it is frightening because I stay at home and I don't make my own income. So, and without control of the finances, how am I going to pay for my own attorney? And so, those are all things that are going through my mind.
See,
and
that's a great comment right there. Is she's home, she's not bringing in the paycheck. The guy is, and she needs a divorce attorney and he needs a divorce attorney. What does she do?
Well, in that case, if they both can consult with attorneys and start to cooperate and the attorneys start to negotiate, the wage-earning spouse will, in fact, initially pay the other spouse's attorney's fees. So she can get her attorney's fees from him. If he will not voluntarily agree to do it, then a court's going to order absolutely some upfront fees.
What's like an average cost of a divorce? Just if you had to pick a figure, I'm curious. I mean, I know you got to figure out, the ownership and things you have and do all that, but
there is no average cost, Mark. It all depends on what's at stake, how much people want to fight. The bigger the fight, the bigger the cost.
Molly Kenny's new book, The Thinking Man's Guide to Divorce in Washington. Appreciate you being with this, and this is basically how to take charge of your divorce. And it's not an easy subject. It's not a pretty thing. You've been through it, been there, done that. So you're the one to give the advice.
Thanks for the guide. I love it. This is great.
You got a guide to give that to?
Well, just give it to friends if they're having a problem. But finally, a guide for men, self-help, your divorce, and what you should know before you even make that decision.
And you can get it from my website or call my office, and I'll send you a free copy.
Molly Kenny, thank you very much for being with us. And coming up, guess what this is? This is like Christmas for private eyes. Why is Valentine's like a Christmas present for a private eye? You're going to find out in just a moment here at Sunrise Seattle.